Let's get more reaction now. We can speak live to Andy Mitten, who covers United closely and edits the fanzine United We Stand. Andy, a very good afternoon to you. What about that performance last night then? Did it feel like the final straw for Ten Hag?
No, it didn't actually. Not in my opinion. It was horrendous. It was as bad as, maybe even worse than Palace when Erik Ten Hag first came in May 22 at the end of the Rangnick season. I've seen some stinking performances at Crystal Palace over the years, but it was awful. You're seeing now on your screens the positioning for that first goal. I wasn't actually surprised that Manchester United were beaten comfortably. I didn't expect it to be 4-0. That's the worst defeat of this season. But when I saw that Harry Maguire was out, Bruno Fernandes was out, 12 players missing in total, probably 5 or 6 of them would have started the game. My confidence in a team which is already really low on confidence dropped. The United fans filled the away end, as they have done for every single game this season, defiant, completely behind the team. But fans are worried. Of course they're worried. This team's dropping off, and it's gone from considering Champions League football as a possible target for this season. Now it looks like Manchester United might not even get any European football, never mind the Europa League. It's the Conference League. Because look at the remaining league fixtures. You've got Arsenal, Newcastle United, Brighton. They've all beaten Manchester United this season. And then there's the FA Cup final against Manchester City. So the mood is low for a reason. The manager's quite rightly being talked about, but there are far more issues than that. It's been a really turbulent season. I mentioned injuries. There's been a change in ownership. And the mood is low among the players, among the fans, among the staff. And I'm optimistic about the future in the medium term, but it's going to require a lot of patience. That's what Sir Jim Ratcliffe asked for. And I'm feeling quite sceptical about the whole thing at the moment. That was a stinking performance last night and an awful result.
And Jamie Carragher called them one of the most poorly coached teams in the division. Do you agree with what he had to say?
Well, I don't watch all the other teams. I just see the teams who Manchester United usually come up against. And I've seen Ten Hag overachieve in his first season. He won the first trophy since 2017 last year. I saw Old Trafford become a fortress again, and teams like Arsenal, Tottenham, Manchester City, Liverpool were all beaten. In fact, Liverpool were beaten on the way to the Cup final this year, and he does deserve some credit for reaching another FA Cup final. I know the mood is completely bleak at the moment. I see Erik Ten Hag in interviews, including one on Sky last week with Gary Neville, where you nod along and think, okay, yep, I'm having that. And then you watch the reality. You watch Burnley come to Old Trafford and have more possession. You watch Sheffield United give Manchester United a huge fright. And it's really worrying as a fan, because you're watching it and you're thinking, how can the team be this bad? But somehow throughout a really bad season, the team have managed to stay in contention, not for a league title. That was out the question right from the start, but for a Champions League place. But the last 6 weeks has really dropped off from that. And I've been thinking, once the players are coming back, things will improve. But the team have now run out of road, and the players have not come back. In fact, the injuries are getting even worse. 7 defensive injuries. I actually rate Ten Hag as a coach. And when I see Bayern Munich being linked with him, I can understand why. And that might sound faintly ridiculous to some fans, but I do think he's a good coach, and he's just having a really, really tough time. And you mentioned 89-90. I was there that season when Manchester United were finishing 11th and 13th under a man called Sir Alex Ferguson, when the fans wanted him to go. And Ten Hag's in a similar position. It's a very complicated job. You've seen who's gone before him. You've seen reputations absolutely battered. The statistics are completely going against him at the moment, but I do not think he's a bad coach.
So, I mean, we've seen comparing him on a lot of different metrics. Ten Hag's performing worse than other recent United managers in some of those metrics, but is still in a job. Do you think there's an element that there are simply no obvious candidates to take over? Does that come into play?
There's a bit of that, and also fans are a little bit tired of continual changing, because when Louis van Gaal came in, this was the Dutch master of philosophy. David Moyes was supposed to be the Ferguson clone. Jose Mourinho was the proven winner. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was bringing the buzz back. So fans aren't just looking at the manager now. So the focus has shifted to the Glazers. There's been a big change there with Ineos. And now people are talking up sports directors and chief executives. And using terms like best in class, and it's not just about the manager now. And I think that's actually fair because it is such a huge club for any one individual. And I see Erik ten Hag in press conferences being asked about things that managers shouldn't really be asked about. So I think Ineos can make changes, have more people speaking out on behalf of the club. There are some positives. The academy system, which I've studied in great depth, is really good, but the mood will always be judged by the results around the first team, not even the performances, because there were times under Van Gaal where fans were saying, just go for it, just go for it. Well, they have gone for it this season, and we're losing games 4-2 and 4-0, and it's really not pretty. So the team need wins. Where the wins are coming from between now and the end of the season, I really don't know. The team need players back. That the injuries, and I'm almost sick of mentioning is, I'm sure the manager is as well, but they do play a big difference. But the confidence of those players is on the floor as well. And yes, the manager should be criticised. Yes, the players should as well. But also a topsy-turvy culture at the club, which has failed in recruitment, which has overpaid for the wrong players. If you look at clubs who recruit smartly, there's a big difference between them and their success and Manchester United.
We heard Paul Scholes speaking. He's called for Steve McLaren, Ten Hag's assistant, as he was under Sir Alex Ferguson, to replace Ten Hag immediately as a short-term appointment. Do you think that is something that they could or should be looking into?
That's his opinion. He's totally entitled to it. I'm not making a decision. Would I change the manager right now? No, I wouldn't, but I'm not making a decision. Fans might have a completely different view to me. Do you get the new manager bounce? I saw the caretaker managers come in with Ryan Giggs, who later admitted he would have done things differently. With Ralph Rangnick, who came in and realised he couldn't bring his coaches in because of Brexit and wasn't expecting Kieran McKenna and Michael Carrick to leave. Certainly McKenna and Martin Pert have done so well at Ipswich Town. So I don't have a panacea. It is a really complicated situation at a club which is totally conflicted at the moment, where the mood is all over the place. I didn't expect Manchester United to get a result at Palace yesterday. I mean, how sad is that? But that's the reality. That's a Palace team who also won at Old Trafford earlier on in the season. And you've seen the 13 defeats. That's just looking domestically. The Champions League was horrendous this season. 1 win in 6 in a group which was by far the most difficult group. So it has been a stinker of a season. But last season was good. And Erik ten Hag was in charge last season. And I don't think that he has just become a completely bad manager. And for that reason, I would be inclined to give him more time. And if we're talking in Christmas and Manchester United are 9th in the table and we're seeing repeat patterns, then I'd be more inclined to make a change. But I am not convinced. And I realise a lot of Manchester United fans would not agree with that, but that's my opinion.
We've already spoken about Jamie Carragher and what he was saying last night. He didn't hold back, in particular as well, when talking about Casemiro. And before I ask you about it, Andy, let's just remind you what he had to say.
I think Casemiro, deadly serious, should know himself tonight as an experienced player that he should only have another 3 games left at the top level. The next 2 league games and a cup final. And then he should be thinking, I need to go to the MLS or Saudi. I'm deadly serious. So he's been an absolute great. I am nowhere near on a level of what that man has achieved. But I always remember something when I retired myself. Leave the football before the football leaves you. The football's left him.
Andy, what did you make of those comments?
When Jamie was very critical of Casemiro at the start of this season, I know Jamie, I said I disagree with you, but he's proven to be more right than I was. His levels have dropped off significantly so. I can't understand it. Was there a switch last June where suddenly Casemiro went from being one of Manchester United's best performers? And it's pretty sad to watch because, as Jamie said, he's been a fantastic player. The problem is, and this leads back into recruitment, he's sat on an absolutely massive contract and he could sit out. I don't think he's a type of person who just wants to stay at a club just to pick up his wages. But there's such a convoluted and complex network of wages which the player's on. And when I was watching Adam Wharton against Casemiro, Adam Wharton grew up 20 miles from Manchester playing for Blackburn Rovers. I mean, that's smart recruitment, isn't it? When you're watching someone like him who rose very quickly at Blackburn Rovers. And Manchester United need to think differently. And I think they will do. This is what Ineos want to do. they were very critical of the Casemiro recruitment. But I remember when he signed, I was happy. I did his first interview when he came to Old Trafford. Lovely fella, fantastic last season, made a huge difference. But then he's dropped right off, and he's not the only one. No, you're going to see changes in the summer. Anthony Martial's out of contract, earns a top wage. Rafael Varane's on a massive wage. We don't know what's going to happen with him. Or with Casemiro, Christian Eriksen, that was a rare start for him at Palace. So if players decide to move on and relinquish some of the big wages that they're on, that frees up a lot of movement for Manchester United. But I don't want to be too downbeat. I still think that even the transfer market could be pretty underwhelming for Manchester United because the club's not as attractive as it once was. I am broadly optimistic with Ineos. I do think things will improve. Stadium's still full for every single game, but these are very tough times for Manchester United. Most football fans will be watching this going, what are you on about? You're 8th in the Premier League. You're about to go to the FA Cup final. But everything's relative. And for Manchester United, that is not good enough. And it hasn't been good enough consistently this season.
You mentioned changes coming in the summer. We heard Ten Hag before the game spending some time defending what he said was a joke that most of the squad was up for sale. How much truth do you think is in that? And who, if anyone, should United definitely be looking to keep?
I think moving a lot of those players on is really complex. I think if Manchester United did have serious offers for almost all of them, they would be considered. There are no sacred cows here. This isn't the time where you'd be like, no, don't sell him. There are so few players who you're thinking this person is absolutely essential to Manchester United's future. So I think that message from Ineos, I can see how it works and it doesn't work. I think there's a lack of suitors. There's not the money in Spain. And why would clubs want these players who've been failing anyway? That's why, for example, John Murta, who's now left the club, he went to Saudi Arabia to try and drum up interest. Jamie Carragher said there about America. So you're looking then at players deciding on a lifestyle choice. And we're seeing this season after season. I find myself repeating myself on this show all the time. You know, Jose Mourinho's coming in, he's a proven winner, things are going to improve. And for a time, they do improve. And they did improve under Erik ten Hag. And a year ago, I'm thinking, this guy really is the man. And as a person, I don't think he's given up on the job. I think that Jose Mourinho, he said himself, he deserved to be sacked. You knew under Ollie Solskjaer that it was coming. You knew 4 months before the end of Van Gaal that was coming. I cannot say for certainty that I know it's coming under Erik ten Hag because I genuinely don't think the decision has been made. And if it has, I'm wrong.
Andy, you mentioned that everything is relative, but given what Ineos paid for their stake, they effectively valued United at, what was it, £4.8 billion. You would presume that a large part of that is based on the revenue from European competition. How damaging, therefore, would it be that United may not actually be in Europe next season?
Hugely damaging. Absolutely hugely damaging. Champions League is far more lucrative and the players and the staff's wages will be cut down because the team have not qualified for that. So that's the first failure. But not to get in the Europa League, a competition I actually rate, or now the Conference League would be an even bigger failure. There are some fans who say we're best off not being in those competitions. I disagree. I think it's good for squad management, more European games. I think it's good as a fan. And a lot of Manchester United fans do actually go to matches and do like going to European aways. And sometimes the more bizarre the locations, the better. And believe it or not, there was a time when I was talking with my mates saying, I'm sick of going to Milan and to Madrid and to Turin and to Munich all the time because it got that boring under Ferguson in the Champions League. Oh, for those days. That's a long, long time ago now. But I would absolutely urge the team to play for a European qualification because any silverware, including the Conference League, I think has got merit. And the corner's got to be turned from somewhere. And let's be honest, this team is nowhere near good enough to be winning the Champions League. When I'm watching some of the games at the moment, I'm thinking Manchester United are so far off this level. And yeah, only a year ago, I watched them go toe-to-toe with a really good Barcelona team and watched Xavi Hernandez raving about how good Manchester United were. And that was under Erik ten Hag as well. So when he has a fully fit team, I was really hopeful last season. But hope has dissipated a lot this season.